Anakin Skywalker had broken through the barrier of pride and approached Mace Windu. The distrust that had been eating away at him now spilled over in hesitant but firm words. Chancellor Palpatine was not who he appeared to be. "He knows the dark side of the Force," said Anakin with conflicted eyes. Windu frowned, surprised by the gravity of the revelation. Anakin, torn between loyalty and love, confessed that he thought Palpatine was actually the Sith Lord the Jedi had been looking for so long. Mace Windu didn't hesitate. It was time to confront the monster disguised as the Chancellor. Mace Windu also asked Anakin not to come any closer and that if it were really true, he would come to truly trust Skywalker. Arriving at Palpatine's quarters with 3 Jedi Masters, Windu confronted the supposed protector of the Republic. The fight was brief and brutal. Palpatine, revealing himself as Darth Sidious, killed the other Masters with ease. Mace, in a defensive position, forced the Sith to the ground and managed to disarm him, about to pass the final sentence. It was then that Anakin appeared, overcome with anxiety, asking Windu not to kill him, but to arrest him and put him on trial. Palpatine, already weak and deformed by the rays he had thrown at Windu, promised Anakin powers that could save Padme from death. The words penetrated Skywalker deeply. Windu hesitated, and it was precisely at that moment that the tragedy unfolded. Seized by the darkness he was still reluctant to accept, Anakin attacked Mace with his lightsaber, cutting his hand with a treacherous blow. And at the same moment, Palpatine unleashed his fury. Force lightning gushed from his hands towards the Jedi Master, hurling his body towards the huge glass window, shattering everything around him. He was thrown like a broken marionette, plummeting from the top of the Senate Tower into the depths of the city. The fall seemed to be the end of one of the greatest Jedi Masters in the galaxy. But it wasn't the end of him yet. Even in freefall, mutilated and burnt, Windu summoned all his training and connection to the Force. He felt the air around him, let his mind transcend the pain and channeled his vital energy to slow his fall. At just the right moment, he visualized a flying car circling a traffic lane below, with a precision that only a great Jedi Master could possess. He used the Force to draw the vehicle towards him and, with a violent impact, he rolled over the metal surface. Fractured, unconscious, but alive. The driver fled in panic, leaving Windu stranded, almost unrecognizable, amid the growing chaos of the city. When he regained some consciousness, Windu crawled into one of Coruscant's dark alleys, avoiding any sign of authority. He knew he was marked, betrayed, and hunted. Still using the last reserves of the Force, he went to a clandestine clinic in the city's sublevels, where escaped doctors treated the war-wounded and criminals. He used the Force's powers of persuasion and found a place to heal without being persecuted. They were suspicious, but impressed by his condition. Mace was burnt, scarred from the Chancellor's last blow, missing his right hand due to Anakin's betrayal, and with severe internal fractures from his free fall. Sedated, he was kept in an isolated ward, while the clones began patrolling the entire city looking for the surviving Jedi. Order 66 had been activated. During the following days, still in hallucinations and physical pain, Windu heard whispers from the streets, reports of deaths, persecutions, and arrests. He felt each dead Jedi like a blade in his soul. The Force trembled around him with the weight of the massacre. In his mind, the image of Anakin became a constant nightmare. He had seen him with his own eyes, choosing the dark side. Mace knew at that moment that the Republic was dead, and that the Jedi had been deceived for years. Palpatine had won. But over the weeks, the healers at the clinic gave him back full consciousness and some mobility, but not peace. Windu spent his days sitting, shrouded in shadows, meditating with difficulty because his spirit was boiling. He felt broken, not just physically, but spiritually. Anakin's betrayal weighed more heavily than the loss of his hand or his purple saber. He was no longer the fair and balanced master he had been before. Anger, an emotion he had always fought, now grew inside him like a seed from the dark side. The Force still flowed, but in a different color. Something had changed. As the Empire grew and the holograms announced Darth Vader as the Empire's new enforcer, Mace began to understand how deep the deception went. The young man he had trusted, the chosen one, was now the right hand of the Sith who had destroyed everything. Windu found himself isolated, watching from afar the transformation of the Senate, the terror imposed by the stormtroopers and the hunt for the last Jedi. Even among the criminals and refugees from the clinic, he became feared, for his eyes carried a restrained fury that he hadn't possessed before. He no longer sought balance. He sought justice, or revenge. On a particularly silent night, as the city hid under the shadow of the Empire, Windu rose with an effort. He walked to the hidden balcony of the clinic and stared at the distant skyscrapers. There, high above, Palpatine's power reigned. In his fist, a new accessory, a makeshift mechanical arm. He felt the connection to the Force pulsing, but there was something else. The memory of his pain, of betrayal, of losing everyone he knew. His body was a recovering wound. His soul a blade being forged. He was no longer just a Jedi Master. In hiding, he began to hear rumors. First he heard that some Jedis like Master Yoda and Master Obi-Wan had managed to escape and remained in hiding, but he learned that not even the children from the Jedi Temple had survived. He heard that some clones had begun to defect. Voices of rebellion whispered in the dark corners of the city. Groups were forming, suspicious, too small to bother the Empire. Windu heard everything and decided to wait, not out of fear but out of strategy. He didn't just want to survive, he wanted to fight back. He needed allies, information, and time. It was still early days, but he knew that the day of revenge would come. And when that day came, Anakin Skywalker would feel the weight of the name Mace Windu in his flesh and soul. Anger was his lifeline. While his body slowly healed, Mace Windu's mind burned hot. In the sublevels of Coruscant, among criminals, outlaws, and black marketeers, he began to move in silence. With his face partially covered by bandages and a gray cloak, Windu began to search for any whisper of surviving Jedi. He used aliases, offered stolen credits, and, when necessary, intimidated with the Force. The old warrior had lost faith in politics and diplomacy, and now acted like a shadow hunting for traces in the darkness. He used old Jedi codes, hidden in ancient communications equipment, to send encrypted messages through obsolete Republic channels. Some fragments of replies arrived, other attempts were silenced, perhaps by fear, perhaps by death. Mace heard about an old master who had been seen in Salokami and about a missing Padawan in the Kessel Mines. No direct contact, no sure ally. He was alone, but the idea that not everyone had succumbed to the clone's treachery lit a flame of hope among his rage. There were still Jedi alive, and perhaps they needed him. Once his mobility was restored, Windu concentrated on rebuilding his body. He couldn't afford weakness. He used scrap metal from the black market to adapt a cybernetic arm to his body, made from parts of decommissioned war droids. It wasn't elegant, but it was functional. Every movement at first was pure pain, but he accepted the pain. He turned it into fuel. He began to train in silence, in the dark rooms of the abandoned clinic. Squats, punches against iron walls, night runs in the underground tunnels. Every day was another step towards regaining control of himself. The scars on his face and body no longer mattered. What mattered was the strength in his fists, the restored balance in his feet. The mechanical arm, crude and heavy, adapted to him like an extension of his will. Windu was now more pain and more power. With each training session, he mentally relived the moment when Anakin betrayed everything he had sworn to protect. The image of that blue saber slicing through his hand was fuel. With every push-up, every jump, every blow into the void, he told himself, "I won't die until I see him fall, and if I have to, I'll give my life without hesitation." It was then that he took up the Vapad, the seventh Jedi combat style, the one that only he mastered completely. A dance of fury and flow, the Vapad required the user to flirt with the dark side without losing themselves in it. Windu knew. He couldn't beat the Empire, Palpatine and Vader with just the light. He immersed himself in anger, pain, and the desire for revenge and channeled it all as part of the form. Instead of resisting the darkness, as the other Jedi did, he transformed it into movement, into strength, into the rhythm of combat. The Vapad pulsed again, and this time he was deadlier than ever. He began to train with simulated sabers, made from scrap metal and heavy wood. Until he recovered his own lightsaber, that should do. Each blow was faster, more aggressive, more precise. His body moved like a whirlwind. His feet seemed to break through the cracked concrete. The shadows of Coruscant's underworld were now his witnesses. In the alleys, voices whispered about a specter in purple who hunted bandits in the early hours of the morning. Windu tested his style against gangs and mercenaries, not for justice, but to measure his power. And every victory was a reminder he was coming back. And this time, no one would go unscathed. The Vapad demanded balance. But Windu was no longer the man who sought balance. He became the contrast itself. A Jedi who danced with the darkness without giving in to it. The old council would disapprove, but the council was dead. The Republic was dead. The ideals that sustained the order no longer applied to this new world. All that remained was the Force and his mission, to destroy Anakin Skywalker and Darth Sidious. He wasn't looking for redemption. He sought fiery justice. For months, Windu continued to live in the bowels of the city, training, hunting down information, and rebuilding his presence as a warrior. He knew that Palpatine was at the center of power, but the heart of his fury was still Anakin, or rather Darth Vader. A long time had passed, and now Anakin presented himself as Darth Vader, a being in a black uniform and despair. I no longer saw him as a corrupted Jedi. I saw him as the murderer of the Order, the perpetrator of betrayal, the monster who destroyed hope. Every time he saw the symbol of the Empire on public screens, Windu clenched his fists. He knew that the confrontation was inevitable, and when that day came, he had to be at his peak. In his dreams, he saw visions of the Force, fragments of possible futures. In many, he saw himself facing Vader on a desert planet or on a space station. In others, he saw himself destroyed, crushed by the same rage that fueled him. But in all, the Vapad shone like a final dance of thunder. The style that so many feared was now his only bridge between the old Jedi and the new warrior who was emerging. No longer an advisor, no longer a general, Mace Windu was now the storm that would come to break the silence imposed by the Empire. A new saber would be needed, a new disguise, new allies. When Windu was thrown through the window of the Chancellor's office, his purple saber fell away from him, spinning in the Coruscant winds like a fading shooting star. He hit one of the lower platforms, cracked part of the handle, and fell into the chaotic traffic. An automated garbage collector almost crushed it, but before it did, a street young man, a little genius called Cato, found it and took it to his hideout. Fascinated by technology and ancient weapons, Cato studied the saber, repaired the power cell, and, after weeks, managed to make it emit an unstable but functional blade. Little did he know what he had in store. Cato didn't last long with the saber. A gang of rarity-hunting aliens discovered it, followed him to his hideout, and robbed him. From then on, Windu's saber became an urban legend in the underworld. The purple bolt from the blue. Every criminal faction wanted to possess that symbol. It was passed from leader to leader, used as a threat, as a trophy, as a weapon of torture. Some said it was bad luck. Others swore it was cursed. After all, none of its wielders lasted very long. Despite its unstable state, its beauty and danger made it coveted. Until an informant brought Windu news of a Twi'lek gang called the Arachnids of Ryloth, who displayed a sword of purple light in their confrontations. It was the opportunity he had been waiting for. Windu had already defeated other gangs that caused problems in his training, so this one would also be easy, and he would probably find his saber. With his mechanical arm, his recovered strength, and the anger channeled through the Vapad, Windu stormed into the gang's warehouse without warning. He entered like a silent gale. He threw the first guard against a wall with the Force, disarmed 3 with his fists, and impaled a 4th with an iron bar that they themselves used to threaten. He didn't need a saber to kill those insects. The Force and his brutality were enough. The confrontation turned into a massacre. Using the Force to deflect shots and the Vapad to guide his movements, Windu defeated his opponents with explosive, almost savage moves. A kick shattered a chest. A blow with scrap metal fractured skulls. and all screams were drowned out by the roar of his fury. When he finally reached the leader's vault, there was his saber in the boss's hands. A purple, unstable blade, too shaky considering what it had once been. Mace Windu used his strength to pull out the saber without giving the big boss a chance, who just ran away. When he grabbed it, it was as if a part of his soul had returned. Holding his purple saber again, Windu felt a wave of power explode inside him. The Vapad, hitherto restrained, roared in all its glory. Now, with the right weapon, his movements became more precise, his connection with the Force intensified. And with that, he began to experience new manifestations of power. Amplified telekinesis, deeper Force vision, and the ability to sense distant presences, something that ordinary Jedi only glimpsed. But there was a new gift that emerged after a few more months of training. The projection of consciousness at a distance. Like a ghost, he could manifest beyond his body. Guided by this new ability, Windu meditated deeply and concentrated on ancient names. He found Yoda in Dagobah and Obi-Wan on Tatooine, not as an ordinary conversation, but as an apparition, a presence that imposed itself like wind and memory. At the sight of them, both masters were startled. They thought Windu had died, but he revealed that he had survived and was changed. He then learned of Padmé's death, Anakin's total fall, and the existence of two hidden children, Leia and Luke. The echoes of the future trembled around these names. The news of the children didn't bring Windu relief, it brought him determination. For him, Anakin was no longer a corrupted Jedi. He was a traitor, a scourge. And if there was a chance that his children would inherit the same destructive potential, Windu decided he couldn't just watch. Yoda and Kenobi insisted on hope, on the balance that could emerge through them. But Windu no longer believed in blind balances. He couldn't trust time, he only trusted actions. He thanked his old masters for the information and disposed of the connection with a final gesture. Now his mission was clear, to find Vader. But unlike the others, he didn't want to rescue Anakin. He wanted to eliminate him just like the Chancellor. The purple saber, symbol of his dangerous balance between light and dark, buzzed at his waist as a warning to those who dared to oppose him. With his weapon restored, his mind resolved and new powers on the rise, Mace Windu left the alleys of Coruscant. He was no longer a survivor, he was a predator. And in the shadows of the Empire, where few dared to lurk, he made his way towards the inevitable confrontation. Not with haste, but with precision. His time would come, and when it did, Anakin Skywalker, now Darth Vader, would feel the weight of every life lost, every lie told, every scar left behind. Mace Windu's trial was coming. Mace Windu became a shadow among the stars. Fueled by a cold fury and unbreakable determination, he tracked every step left by Darth Vader and Palpatine. He used his new gifts to manipulate weak minds and extract information from Imperial officials, spies, and even merchants. Every clue, every coordinate, led him closer to the heart of the Empire. He didn't just infiltrate with caution, he infiltrated with purpose, like an unstoppable specter. A man who had returned from the abyss with a single mission: revenge. His clothes were dark, heavy, camouflaged. With the Force, he hacked into terminals, listened to encrypted conversations, and entered ships through cargo passages. In the shadows of the outer galaxies, he learned of something grand under construction, a colossal battle station, still in its infancy. The Death Star. That was where his two targets were hiding. And that was where he would go, even if it was the last place he would ever visit. Windu knew that a frontal approach would be suicide, so he used his connection to the dark side, channeled through the Vapad, to obscure his presence in the Force. He crossed security checkpoints, fooled mental sensors, and made stormtroopers believe the corridor was empty as he passed. His psychic abilities became so refined that he could plant suggestions in entire commanders with a simple exchange of glances. Thus, no one realized that a storm was approaching. The ship he invaded, a star destroyer that served as Vader's temporary base, was orbiting a rocky moon. It was dawn in the ship's internal cycle, and the few remaining clones, now replaced by human recruits, were asleep. One by one, Windu eliminated them in absolute silence. He used the Force to break necks from a distance or suffocate targets without making a sound. All this so that, when the time came, nothing would interrupt the duel he had been waiting for years. The air seemed denser as he approached the center of the ship. The automatic doors opened with a subtle hiss and revealed the shadowy figure of Darth Vader, shrouded in silence, standing like a living statue. It was as if he had known he was coming. Windu advanced with heavy steps, and Vader slowly turned his face towards him. Without hesitation, the metallic voice cut through the silence. "I was just waiting for the moment when that rat would appear." Mace Windu stopped a few meters away, his already activated purple saber vibrating with an intense glow. His eyes, once full of Jedi serenity, now bore the fury of the betrayed. The tension was palpable. Then he spoke with a fury never seen before. "It's time for you to pay for what you've done." The silence was broken by the sharp sound of Vader's red saber being activated. The collision of the two blades lit up the corridor in red and violet flashes. The confrontation was brutal. Windu, with his Vapad technique refined to the extreme, spun with ferocity, brutality, and unpredictability. His blows were fast, savage, and difficult to block. Vader, on the other hand, was a wall. His every move had weight, force, and lethality. It was like facing a tank, and Windu a storm of blades. The fight raged throughout the central hangar, violent and exhausting. Boxes were broken in half, panels exploded in sparks, and each impact between the sabers vibrated like metallic thunder. Windu took advantage of every dark emotion from Vader to fuel his Vapad, spinning and attacking with almost savage precision. But not all his skill was enough to escape unscathed. A sideways blow from Vader hit his left shoulder, burning flesh immediately, while a thrust with the Force threw him into a wall, cracking his ribs and breaking other bones. Even so, he got up, limping, his teeth clenched. His will was stronger than the pain. Finally, bleeding, panting, and with his arm dangling partially without strength, Windu saw an opening when Vader belittled him. In a final movement, driven by contained rage and the balance between light and shadow, he spun his saber under Vader's guard, disarming him with a fulminating impact. The red saber rolled across the floor, sparking. Vader tried to use the Force to fight back, but Windu was already on him. With a hoarse, almost guttural cry, he channeled all that was left in his body and spun the purple blade, cleanly slicing off the former Chosen One's head. Vader's helmet fell off with a metallic thud, and his imposing body tumbled to the side. Staggering, with blood dripping down his chin and his breathing heavy, Mace Windu stood there, staring at the body on the ground. There was no smile or victory on his face, just the silence of someone who had survived the impossible. He slowly switched off his saber and leaned against one of the hangar columns, feeling the pain intensify. But he was alive. He had won. And now, with Anakin Skywalker finally eliminated, there was only one name echoing in his wounded and relentless mind: Palpatine. The end was near. Mace Windu staggered through the corridors of the Imperial ship, his body in tatters, blood mixed with sweat running down his face. His muscles screamed for rest, but his soul burned with the flames of revenge. He was feeding only on contained rage, on justice that had not yet been fully completed, because there was still one more to go. He channeled every drop of remaining energy into moving forward. Using the Force as support, he piloted Vader's own ship towards the base where Palpatine was hiding. He knew this would be his last mission, and he didn't intend to fail. When he arrived at the Emperor's fortress, he was greeted by a few officers who had received no report of Vader's death. With a nod, he snapped necks. With a gesture, he smashed armor. The few guards were thrown against the walls with such force that their bones shattered like glass. He climbed the final steps of the Empire's throne, bleeding, limping, but unshaken. The doors to the throne room opened with a bang. Palpatine turned slowly, his eyes widening as he saw not Vader, whom he had been waiting for, approaching, but a ghost from the past. At his feet, Windu dropped Darth Vader's head. For a moment, the Emperor lost his composure. "I thought I had destroyed you, but you keep getting in my way." The Sith's voice came out more angry than threatening. His eyes traveled down to Windu's torn body, the deep wounds, the obvious fatigue. He smiled with disdain. "You're already dead. You just forgot to fall." The Force exploded between the two of them. The entire hall shook as panels. Debris and statues were thrown from one side to the other. A purely mental and spiritual clash. Windu held on to every object thrown by the Force with uncommon effort, while Palpatine used his fury to try and crush the Jedi Master. When he could no longer sustain the telekinetic confrontation, the Emperor roared and unleashed a storm of lightning. Mace responded by raising his purple saber, absorbing the electrical attack with a titanic effort, showing off his mechanical arm. The ground cracked beneath Windu's feet, but he resisted. He lunged forward with his saber, slicing through the air and dodging the lightning with reflexes that didn't seem possible for someone so badly injured. Palpatine retreated, throwing lightning bolts and laughing insanely. The physical clash intensified, with saber blows, flames and screams reverberating off the walls. But the injuries took their toll. Windu fell to his knees once, then again. Palpatine sensed victory within reach. "Farewell, Jedi Master." But Windu wasn't finished. With the Force, he pulled out Vader's red saber, which he still carried at his waist. He ignited it with a furious snap. He now wielded two blades, one purple and one red. "I'm in control now." The combination of the two sabers confused Palpatine. Windu used the purple saber to defend and the red to attack. He spun between attacks like a living shadow, a figure between light and darkness. Palpatine stood back in disbelief. "How do you still move like that?" His wide eyes stared at the near-dead Jedi who was fighting like a force of nature. Windu's every blow was laden with years of pain, betrayal, and endurance. He wasn't fighting for glory. He was fighting to finish what he had started. Finally, with a move of millimeter precision, Windu crossed his two sabers and lopped off the Emperor's head. The lifeless body fell to the floor of the throne. The Empire had lost its master, and Windsurf knelt at that moment. His body was already coming to an end. Days later, on Tatooine, Obi-Wan Kenobi was meditating in his cave, feeling a disturbance in the Force. Something was approaching. From the shadows, Mace Windu emerged. His body resembled that of the undead, but his eyes still glowed with intensity. Without saying a word, he pulled out two bloody sacks from inside his cloak. He threw them at Obi-Wan's feet. The heads of Palpatine and Darth Vader rolled slowly across the sand. Obi-Wan, shocked, fell to his knees. "Mace, what did you?" Windu smiled wearily, then fell to his knees too. The hot floor of Tatooine welcomed him like a tomb. His body could take no more. Every cell was screaming for the end. Obi-Wan ran to him, but Windu raised his hand, asking for silence. "It's done. Now it's up to you to rebuild. Guide the Jedi, find the survivors. I've only just finished my part." With a final sigh, Mace Windu collapsed. His face turned to the scorching sky. His mission was accomplished. The monsters who had destroyed the Republic had been silenced. The cycle of betrayal had finally been broken. The name Mace Windu would echo across the galaxy, not as the Jedi who fell, but as the Jedi who rose. Obi-Wan silently collected his sabers. The war continued, but that day justice had won.